Ever since I posted my day in the life of an au pair living in a pool house, Sydney beachside apartment videos, I've gotten a lot of questions about au pairing, and in this video I'm going to tell you how I became an au pair in Australia. I don't feel like many people even know what au pairing is and what a great opportunity it is, depending on your situation of course, but it could be a great job or side income, if you will, when you need accommodation or want to explore a new city, country, and just stay temporarily with a host family. To start off, what exactly is au pairing? Au pairing is kind of like a cultural exchange program where a nanny or a babysitter moves in with a family and becomes part of their household and helps out with the kids and some household duties. Why did I au pair? I started au pairing in, I believe, 2020 when I found my host family. I was looking for a job. It was during COVID times and it was hard, but I had experience tutoring kids. So I thought babysitting could be a great option. At the time, a lot of people were looking for au pairs because borders were shut and not a lot of au pairs could come from overseas. So nannies who were already in Australia, families were looking for those. I just started out with an idea that I love kids and I couldn't afford my living expenses at the time because I didn't have a job and because it was COVID times. So it was great to find a family where I don't have to pay rent. They pay your board and your living expenses. Mine was just rent and food, whatever they had. I could have it, but I had to do groceries on my own. So it's great in that way because I didn't have to worry about my living expenses and I knew I always had a job because I was living in their house. It definitely offers some stability in terms of because you're living in their house, you'll always have a job, and because kids are always at work, you're always going to have something to do around the house, even if they're not going to school, if it's the holidays, etc., etc. This question I've gotten a lot is that how did you find your host family and how did you find au pairing in general? How did I come across it? Basically, there's this site called findbabysitter.com. That's where I found the family I lived with for 2 years in Sydney. I lived on the Northern Beaches, which was a great spot to move into. It's very posh, very beachy, and I just loved the area I was in. This is another thing about au pairing, is that you get to live a lifestyle that you'll probably not be able to afford on your own. And normally the au pair room is in the family home, but I was lucky enough to find a family where they had a main house, then there was a pool and a pool house, which was a fully equipped studio. It had kitchen, bathroom, bedroom space, and TV and a cupboard. You can watch my pool house room tour to see what it was. So I was really lucky with that because I didn't have to be in the house, because when you're in the house the rules are different, but because I had some privacy it was way better. And all this was mentioned in that Find a Babysitter ad that they put up. So they outlined all the responsibilities and the living situation that I'll be in, as well as the pocket money I'll be getting. I'll be getting to the pocket money expenses part later, but that's everything that you can expect to see when you're looking at a au pair position ad. So I read that. I had no problem, living in the house even at that point. I was just messaging families at that time to see what sticks, and this family responded. I proceeded to the interview phase. It was a phone call, and then I went to meet them, and they got to see what I'm like with the kids, and I got to see what they're like, what the house looks like, what my living situation will be, which was great. And shortly after that, they told me they'd like me to move in. The main point of that meeting is to really gauge the person you'll be living with, so I'll definitely suggest you get a sense of how their household is and what you'll be walking into, because that's a very important part of being an au pair, is that you're not only choosing your job, you're also choosing your housemates. So, and your landlords actually, so be careful of that. That's a big decision to make. As fun as it is, moving into a nice place, a different place, and a new job, it should offer you stability, ideally. And if you can sense something is off, don't go for it. I would highly recommend that, because I've also had bad au pairing experience. I've only au paired twice, 2 families, but I've had contrasting experiences. So look out for that. Another place that you can find au pair jobs would be Facebook groups. That's where I found my second family. The group is called Sydney Nannies, Au Pairs and Babysitters, and a lot of families just post a picture, of their family and what they're looking for, and if it's an au pair position, you can directly message them and take it from there. Another website I just remembered you can use is care.com. I did pay for it to get connected and message families. Another one that I found to be really useful and was very cheap was jugglestreet.com.au. It's on the web browser. It's not an app, unfortunately, but there's a lot of families on there, and I've got a lot of opportunities to talk to families there. I've never actually gone through with the families from there, but yeah, that's a great resource because families are always posting on that website. Another question that I normally get is, what experience did I need for au pairing? Ideally, babysitting is amazing. I used to tutor kids, so that's what I explained, and my values towards kids, because I feel like families really look for that much rather than experience. Some families would be different, of course, but I feel like most families would just want to make sure that you're going to take care of their kids and you love kids, and just show that enthusiasm, really. And my first au pair family just gave me a shot because they couldn't find a suitable person. They interviewed people who were more experienced than me, but they just couldn't vibe with them. So if you have a passion for kids, I feel like that's what makes parents most comfortable, to give their kids to a caring, loving person that would take care of their kids, and that's what they really want. So just someone who's trusting. I also had a working with children's check, which in Australia you can apply for online. It's just a background check, which families normally require. Some families also require a first aid certificate, so just first aid training. Some families pay for that before you start. My family's offered to pay, but we never just did it because fortunately nothing traumatic happened in those times to the kids, so I didn't actually need it, but it's really helpful to do it in case of emergencies. We just never got around to it. These days, families also require you are vaccinated because you're around kids. So that's all that's going to be required of you in terms of qualifications and experience. Another question I get is, what's the process after you find a family? So after you found a family, you've talked to them on the phone, you've met them in person, you've met the kids, you know what your responsibilities are and what you're walking into. The next step is definitely checking references. So have they had au pairs before? Any nannies? What's their experience like? And try to really drill those references, because then you actually know what you're walking into, because families can present themselves to be the best family in the world, but eventually you're the outsider in their house. So I would suggest to really try to do your background search before you step into someone's house. It's as much of a danger for you as it is for them, because they're trusting you with their kids, but you're also trusting them with your house and a job. So they should be good people and good to work with. Otherwise, you're in someone's house and you can't leave, and that's very bad for your mental health. It really takes a toll, because you live where you work, and that's not a great situation to be in. It's a great situation in terms of you don't have to pay for it, but at the end of the day, you are paying for it in terms of taking care of the kid, in terms of care. So as we're on the topic of getting paid, let's talk about how you get paid as an au pair. So the way it works is, at least in my experience, however many hours you're supposed to do and what the standard rate is that a nanny would get, they basically just cut the accommodation cost that they think is fair for that room or board that you're living in. It's normally lower than what it would actually go for, but you also have to think that nobody would want to live in someone else's house and pay rent like that, especially with a family. So you're getting a good deal, but don't forget they're getting basically cheap labor because you are working the same amount as a nanny, but because you're living in the house, they pay you less. I'm being brutally honest here because I know the young girls that are going to be watching, aspiring to, go au pair, but I just have to put disclaimers because I don't want you to be in a bad situation, because as much as I like to glorify the life I had au pairing, it definitely is not the easiest. It's still at the end of the day a job, so I have to be pretty honest about it. For example, I was working 25 hours for this family, and the standard rate I think they were paying me was $20 per hour, but because I was staying with them, the amount I got per week was $250 instead of $500 because I was paying rent or board of staying in their house. So at the end of the day, you are paying to live there, and you're also working, but you're just getting paid less. So, but I think as long as it's a good situation, it's worthwhile because you are living a lifestyle that you normally wouldn't, and you always have a job and you get your accommodation paid for. Most of the time, food would also be included. I was welcome to any food in the house. I just didn't tell them to buy me groceries. I basically bought groceries myself. Also because I had a kitchen in my room, so I was able to, have that freedom of cooking my own meals and doing things on my own time. Another question I get is, how is taking care of kids? It's not fun, let me just say. I used to love kids. I still do. I still have a soft spot for them, but I feel like after au pairing, it's kind of dull my love for kids because it is a lot taking care of kids, and I feel like every parent would relate to that. It is a lot. It takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of mental preparation, because they are cute, but they have their moments too. And sometimes when you're not having a good day, it's just not a great time. And taking care of kids, it might sound easy, but it does take a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of you. And next, what was my schedule like with the kids? What was I actually doing? For every family, it would be different. For my first family, which I think is most cases, is that you would help before and after school care. So before school, I would, get them up, get them ready for school, get them out the door, and basically send them off to school. And when it was time to pick them up, I basically picked them up, did homework with one of them, prepared for dinner, picked up the other one, and basically tidied up the whole house. I swept the house, I unloaded the dishwasher, I walked the dog. There was a lot to do in the evenings, and basically got them ready for a bath and bed. I didn't have to do the bath part because that was not previously discussed with me, and when I was there they were expecting me to do it, but because I wasn't aware that I had to do it, I wasn't comfortable doing it. And you can do that as well if something is not discussed and the family expects you to do it. Talk to them about what they initially offered and that you're not a servant in their house, because a lot of the times it can turn into that, like you're the help and you have to reinstate that you're an au pair and you can't do everything. Some families might not respond well to that and would expect you to go above and beyond, but you're not the help. And this is what I mean by gauge what the household is like, what the family is like, before you actually step into it. Another question that you would wonder if you watch my channel is that, do you have time to do other things? I definitely do. I ran my freelance social media marketing business that gave me a bit of income with my au pair job. I was also studying at uni, so I was doing a bunch of things while I was still au pairing. It was really hard, let me just say, but it's a great way to get your expenses paid and focus on other aspects of growing your income, which could be great. Another question you would wonder is, were you allowed to have people come over? Because it's not your house, you have to discuss that with the parents, because they might have different views on that, and that's alright, but you should discuss it before you go there. Because I was allowed to have friends over as long as I inform them that they're coming over, but it was fine at the end of the day. They were pretty chill about it because I had my own private space. But I guess if you're living in their house, that would be kind of hard, and I've heard people aren't allowed to do that or come late, and that could be a bit annoying because you don't have that freedom that you want in your own house. Well, it's not your house, but it is your space. And at the end of the day, I would just suggest that you build a relationship with the family. That could be a nice way of living and coexisting together, as long as you guys share the same values. It should be easy, but if you don't, I would suggest to get out of there quick because it would just get worse. But yeah, be part of their family, go to events with their friends. I used to do that. I went to Christmas with their friends, and I used to go to their friends' houses when they had parties at their own house, the family. I went and met their friends a lot of the times, so I was pretty integrated and it was great. I am still in touch with the family I au paired for. I was there for 2 years, and I still love the kids to bits, and I couldn't be more thankful for that experience, even though it had to end. I feel like it was a great time that I spent there. It was stressful, I will not lie, it was hard. It offered me a lot of new experiences and way of living that I didn't know before, so I would definitely recommend it. But like I said, you have to choose well. So that was all. If you have any more au pair related questions, don't be afraid to DM me on Instagram and I'd be happy to answer them. And possibly do a part 2 of this because I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions as well. So stick around and I'll see you next time.